Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of my 2017 MotoGP vlog and review. Normally this is going to be taking place on a motorcycle, but because it's so cold where I am, I unfortunately can't get out today. I am hoping to be out and do a full moto vlog for the first race in Qatar on March 26th, but for now we're going to have to be doing it like this. This episode we're going to be looking at the Sepang test, which took place at the beginning of February. Well, technically not the first test of the 2017 season. That was in Valencia at the end of the 2016 season. It is the first test after the winter break when all the manufacturers have taken back all the suggestions that the riders gave them at the end of 2016 and tried to apply them to the new bikes. So this really is the first gauge we have of how the season's going to look and where everybody's kind of starting from. So what could we learn? What did we notice? What could we see? I guess the first thing we saw was a wet Sepang track, and not a full wet, a damp Sepang track. It seemed to rain overnight and be damp during the day, which was unfortunate because if it had been a full wet, the riders could have actually taken out and the teams could have taken the bikes out in a full wet setup and actually tested the bikes in the wet. But because it was kind of an in-between wet, it was a damp wet, it was just, when they're testing, there's just no point to do it. Obviously, if they get here at the end of the season and it's going to be like this, they'll have a much better idea of how to set the bikes up to begin with. But when they're simply trying to test, which sort of requires them to be constantly pushing the bikes to the limits to find out where the shortcomings are and where the limits are, that's really what you're doing in testing. So in those conditions, it just makes no sense. They can't learn anything because they can't push the bikes hard enough because of the conditions. That being said, it seems like it was a pretty productive test. It seems like most of the teams and riders were pretty happy with what they got out of the 3 days there, which is a long time when you haven't been riding for a while and all of a sudden you have to do, 24 hours worth of testing over 3 days. I don't know how much more they could have done. So despite the fact that the weather wasn't perfect, it still seemed like it was a pretty productive test overall, and hopefully that's going to lead to an even more exciting 2017 season. So let's jump right in, take a look, see what we could have learned. I guess we can start with Lorenzo on Ducati. A lot of people are kind of curious to see how the smooth operating Spartan is going to deal with that demon of a Ducati. It's a good question because on paper it doesn't really look like a good matchup. Lorenzo makes his money in the middle of the corner, fast mid-corner speed, and the Ducati is a typical point-and-shoot type bike. So inevitably something's going to have to give. As much as Ducati is going to try, I'm sure has tried over the whole winter to make that Ducati turn more to Lorenzo's liking, inevitably, like I said at the end of last year, Lorenzo's going to have to change his style. And I suggested again at the end of last year that that's probably what, this is a new challenge for him. So I think that he's going to. If you look throughout the weekend, you can see the first day he really had issues, he really had problems. Because again, he was trying to turn that bike like he was turning the Yamaha. He was on that Yamaha for 9 years. It was a bike that really suited his riding style. It was smooth. It had smooth power delivery, and it had a lot of stability in the middle of the corner. So it was when it was leaned over. So it meant that he could do his thing his way. The Ducati, on the other hand, is an entirely different type of bike. It's a demon on the brakes. It's a demon on acceleration. But as far as turning the bike, it takes a little bit of a different sort of approach. So what it sounded like to me was that what Lorenzo was originally doing on the Yamaha, he was essentially, as he would enter into his corners, he was braking a little bit earlier. He was initiating braking a little bit earlier than everybody else. He was letting off the brakes a little bit earlier than everybody else, at which point he sails through the middle of the corner with a higher speed or a slightly higher speed than everybody else. And then he would get on the accelerator again a little bit earlier than everybody else. So that's really how he was running those fast corners with that Yamaha. But of course, that type of corner, that approach to the corner requires a bike like the Yamaha. The Yamaha itself is both very stable in the middle of the corner, and it has a very smooth acceleration style, so that he could do that with that bike very well. The trouble he found on the Ducati was is that on day one, he was trying to sort of turn the Ducati the same way. And the Ducati, what he was saying was the Ducati wasn't turning in the middle of the corner. So essentially what he's got to do is he's got to learn how to use the back brake or start using the back brake more. He apparently didn't use it hardly at all with the Yamaha. He definitely has to do that with the Ducati. But essentially he has to relearn. He has to learn how to ride the bike in a point and shoot type style, essentially riding more like Marquez rides. In order to operate that bike correctly, he was finding that he couldn't turn the bike in the middle of the corner. And what they said is what you need to do is brake later than you were with the Yamaha, let off the brakes later, and literally that action of letting off the brakes as you go into the middle of the corner is part of what helps turn that Ducati. So it's that sort of hard braking into the corner and letting off the brakes at the last second, and that change as you let off the brakes is that momentum of that change is what helps to turn that bike around. And then of course, as soon as you line it up the other way, you peg the throttle and shoot it out of the hole. So honestly, I'm fascinated by this. I think it's going to be awesome. I'm fascinated to see somebody like Lorenzo, who has won a number of world championships in a particular style. And now he's taken on this challenge to go over to Ducati, knowing that he's going to have to change that championship winning style of his and see if he can still measure up doing riding in a way that maybe isn't his first choice. So I think it's ballsy on his part. I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting for MotoGP, and certainly Ducati has to be thinking that this is their best shot. If they're going to win a title in the next 2 years is the time to do it with Lorenzo there. So I'm fascinated by it. It seemed like at the beginning of the day one of the test, he was really behind. And by the end of the test, he was only 4/10 down on the leaders. He was 10th overall, but 4/10 down isn't very much over the first test. And I have no doubt that he's going to get faster, and he's consciously changing his style to suit the Ducati's way of riding, or to ride the Ducati how the Ducati wants to be best ridden. The other thing I found interesting was the situation with Stoner, who placed second, I believe, in the overall weekend. Kind of an odd situation there to have a world champion as your test rider, and you've got to wonder that if Lorenzo doesn't get up to speed fast enough, and you have another situation in Phillip Island or even the Qatar test, I think on March 10th, right before the first race, you've got to wonder how that's going to affect Lorenzo mentally. Like if he gets into a situation where he really can't handle the bike or finds that he's just not able to ride it as quickly as he did the Yamaha, you've got to wonder, having that test rider there who's ultimately putting in better laps than you and seems to be more effective on the bike, you've got to wonder how that sort of situation plays out between the two. I think obviously Stoner is going to handle it professionally. He probably recognizes, when you're dealing with these guys at this level, there's a lot of big egos. There's a lot of, these are uber competitive guys. And you just got to wonder how that's going to affect Lorenzo, if it does at all. Hopefully it doesn't, but it's food for thought moving into the rest of the season. So let's switch now to Vinales on the Yamaha, another rider people were interested in, seeing him on the Yamaha. How was he going to do? He was first at the Valencia test. Again at Sepang, he was first. He was also ahead of Rossi, apparently by quite a bit, at a November test that was a private test for Yamaha. So considering what he did on the Suzuki last year, I'm not entirely surprised. I like Vinales. He's got great consistency. He's got great focus. I think he's going to be a champion very shortly. I don't know if it's going to be this year. Possible. I don't know how he's going to do trying to run at the top of the pack with not just Rossi, but also Marquez and Lorenzo. These guys are all very, very competitive and all very, focused on winning. And as soon as Vinales kind of puts his foot in there, you can guarantee that he's going to get attention from all of them. And I don't think it's going to be easy. Does he have what it takes? I certainly think he does. He certainly has the potential. Is he going to do it this year? I don't know. I think he does lack a little bit of experience up there at the front. I think once, race by race throughout the season, he might have trouble staying up there once he starts really battling neck to neck with, like I said, Rossi and Lorenzo and Marquez. The second thing is that it seems like Vinales is going to get a lot of the development work. I would think that Yamaha is a little bit focused, knowing that Rossi only has 1 or 2 years left. I think that he's going to get a 1-year extension, all things being equal, because I think he really wants to race when he's 40. So I think that he will get another year after this, or after his last year, sorry. But I think that, Yamaha is somewhat focused on trying to give him at least the opportunity to win that 10th title, which I think would be great for Rossi. I think it would be great for Yamaha. It would certainly be great for MotoGP in general. I think it would be a great sort of PR thing. And I think it would be awesome for the sport in general. So I do hope that happens at some point. But that being said, I don't know, all things being equal, if Vinales takes over or Vinales sort of seems like he's got the lead, obviously Yamaha is going to jump behind him because they want to win no matter what. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I'm again super excited to see it. Rossi on his part seemed like he was happy. Seemed like he was happy with the bike. He seemed like he said that it felt good, that it felt comfortable. He could, he felt good on it. So ultimately, that's a great sign. The Yamaha from last year didn't need a lot of improvement, so it seems like Yamaha is just kind of continuing with this slow kind of pace development, not too quickly, not too fast, because they don't want to, a lot of times when you take a step forward, you end up taking 2 steps back. So they don't want to do that. So it looks good for Yamaha. Who are they going to win? Who knows? But it certainly looks like they're kind of, in my opinion, the sort of front runners to take the championship for 2017. Another interesting thing about the Yamaha was they seemed to be the first manufacturer at this test to sort of tip their hand as far as their aerodynamics for the 2017 season. As everybody knows, the winglets are now banned. The Ducati especially is probably going to suffer a little bit from that. And as a result, the teams are looking for a way to sort of get back some of the benefits they were finding with those front winglets, the downforce and the anti-wheelie effects. So Yamaha was the first one. They I think on the second or third day, they whipped out these sort of internal winglets that were kind of on the inside of the fairing rather than on the outside, in the same basic location, but sort of on the inside. I don't know what kind of effect that's going to have. It didn't seem, I think Rossi was the one who said that he didn't see much out of it, but he always kind of seems to say that. I don't think he's ever really been a big fan of the winglets. I think he finished, 6th at this test, which is pretty respectable for him. He was only about, 2.5 seconds down on Vinales, so pretty good. But are they going to keep those? I don't know. What is everybody else going to get? We're probably going to see more for aerodynamics when we get to Phillip Island on the 15th. So another little thing to look out for is whether Yamaha is actually going to keep those internal winglets or whether they're going to go with something else. So let's flip over now to the Suzuki, and more specifically Iannone. He finished the weekend 2nd overall, which is pretty good. He was a little bit slower on the 3rd day, but 2nd overall, only 1/10 down on Vinales. Give credit to both Iannone and the Suzuki itself. They brought an engine this year. They had a bigger engine last year, which showed by the fact that the Suzuki was far more competitive last year. But I think this year it's going to be even more competitive. They've got more power, specifically more mid to top end power in the engine. And personally, I think that Iannone on that Suzuki is the perfect mix. I think that going to Suzuki, as much as Iannone, I'm sure as an Italian guy, he wanted to ride that Italian bike and win. I think that going to Suzuki was the best thing for him. I think that his riding style, that kind of, maniacal riding style, is going to fit really well with the nimble sort of change of direction of the Gixxer. I think it's going to be a great, combination. I think that he's going to have a great season, all things being equal. I think he's going to find himself a lot more comfortable on that Suzuki, trying to do things that I think, his riding style, I think the way he wanted to move around on the Ducati, I don't think that the Ducati was as forgiving as the Gixxer's going to be in the corners especially. when he's kind of moving around. He's a little bit frantic. But like I said, I think that it's the best thing. Again, I'm sure he was disappointed to leave with the Ducati, but I think that he's going to have a great season. I think it's going to be spectacular to watch him on there, and I think honestly he's going to be up in that top 3, top 5 pretty regularly, and just more competitiveness, more action for us to watch. So I think it's awesome. I think it's going to be great. The only downside for, I guess, Iannone is the fact that his teammate Rins, who came up from Moto2, is a rookie. So unfortunately, Davizio, so Iannone is going to have to do most of the development work, which means he's going to have to take on that task. He doesn't have a teammate that he can sort of dump that on. The only benefit, I guess, to that is that all of the development is going to be sort of around him. So, it's a double-edged sword. But like I said, I think it's going to be great. I think Suzuki's going to have a great year. I think I'm so excited. Iannone's one of my favorite riders. I guess they're all sort of my favorite riders in one way or another. But I like Iannone. I really want to see him do well. I think that this is going to be, my prediction is that this is going to be a great year for both him and the Suzuki. So you can hold me to that at the end of the year, and I hope I'm right. So let's jump now to Honda and Marquez. We've come to expect great things from Marquez, and he certainly didn't fail to deliver. Only 1.5 seconds down, he was third place overall for the weekend. Certainly he wanted to be on top, as he always does, but like he said after the fact, they're ahead of where they were last year. Again, Honda now switching to the Big Bang firing order from the sort of Screamer firing order, trying again to tame that engine, that aggressive Honda power delivery that's sort of preventing them from getting on the throttle early out of corners. So again, they're going to be looking at the electronics. They're going to be looking at trying to tame that engine. That's going to be their biggest foe. But knowing them, they seem like they're in a pretty good place. They're not that far down. And like Marquez said, they're ahead of where they were last year. So seems like everything for the most part is on track for them. Pedrosa as well, coming back with a 5th. I thought that was awesome. As much as I'd love to see Rossi win at some level, just because I think it would be great for the sport and MotoGP in general, if you gave me the option between Rossi winning and Pedrosa winning, I don't know which one I could choose. I would love to see Pedrosa win, and seeing him come back in, what was it? I think he was 5th this time, only 0.2 down. I thought was awesome. It's great. Hopefully Michelin is going to, bring him some tires that aren't going to sort of negatively affect him because of his weight. I think last year he was the one that really got the brunt end of that change to the Michelin tire. Not that Michelin are bad, but, it does take time for them to sort of catch up. And I think he suffered the most. I'm really hoping that he's going to have a much better year. He's also apparently gotten or hired the assistance of MotoGP winner Siete Gibernau, I believe, and who's going to be now his team coach. He's going to be taking care of a lot of things behind the scenes so that Pedrosa can just focus on winning. There's a lot of people kind of saying, because I think Pedrosa only has 1 year left, a lot of people are kind of saying that possibly Pedrosa's place at Honda is in risk. I think there's some truth to that, because he's not like a young guy anymore. He does have to, step up and perform. But at the same time, I think that, Livio Supo, Honda, they're not dummies. And they have certainly watched all the problems that Yamaha has had trying to put 2 big stallions in the same barn. And they've watched the problems that Yamaha has had, and you've got to wonder. My opinion on it is that I don't think that Honda's so eager to sort of change that dynamic in their team. As much as they could win by bringing in somebody younger, do they really want to sort of mess with Marquez? I guess is a way to put it. Do they really want to change that dynamic there? Because the reality is that, if you think that Marquez is going to be consistent for the next 2, 4, 6 years, which every sign is that he will be, and he's your go-to guy, it's difficult for them, as Yamaha found out, when you get 2 big guys in the barn, the two big bulls in the barn, it becomes difficult. The dynamic becomes difficult. And sometimes you can have teammates that are competitive with each other and that helps drive them to be better in general. But on the other end, you can also have those competitive relationships between teammates that take away from both of their ability to do a good job. I think that's what we were seeing at Yamaha. So is Honda and Livio Suppo gonna change it up and dump Pedrosa anytime soon? My guess is no, but you never know. Like I said, there is some truth to the fact that Pedrosa is not a spring chicken and he does need to win. I would love to see it. I would love to see Pedrosa win. It would be spectacular. I think what is it? The most winningest guy who's never won a championship. It would be a shame if he didn't, but ultimately that's what the competition is for, to decide. So hopefully he's going to do that. Hopefully Michelin's going to bring something that's a little more Pedrosa friendly this season. And another guy I'm excited to see. I really want to see him. He had a really tough year last year, and I really want to see Pedrosa do good. And another guy I'm actually interested in seeing do well again this year because of last year is Cal Crutchlow, although for the exact opposite reason, because he had a spectacular year last year. 2 wins, 1 in the dry, 1 in the wet. And then not only that, he got the win in Brno, the race before his home race, and went home to Silverstone and got a second in front of his home crowd. I can't imagine how awesome that was for him to stand up there in front of his country at his home race on the podium. Sure, it wasn't a first, but he was on the podium. And, what a magnificent year for Crutchlow last year. So is he going to get more? Hopefully he is. He's sort of in the same place. He said, I think in his last interview, he said something like that essentially the bikes are the same for the most part, which, obviously they are. He's the Honda development guy. Are they going to give him more? I certainly hope they do. I certainly hope they give him as much as they can, because God knows he's earned it. And, there are whisperings, again, of people suggesting possibly that if he has another good year and Pedrosa doesn't, again, going back to Pedrosa, that possibly Crutchlow is a guy to go up to the, the big Honda team, Honda Repsol. So something to consider, certainly something for him to work for. But I hope he has a great year again. I thought it was awesome seeing him win last year. Seeing a Brit up there in between, all the Italians and the Spanish that tend to get up there pretty regularly was great. So another guy I'm excited to watch for in the 2017 season. So let's take a look at a few of the other teams. Aprilia continuing development now with Alicia Spargaro and Lowe's. They did, I think, pretty good last year as far as development was concerned, so they're going to obviously continue in that direction. And from the sounds of it, they're going to have another newcomer, KTM, nipping at their heels, because KTM looked fabulous, considering this is, I think we saw them at the Valencia test, but this is their first real go. They've had all winter again. And apparently the power in that thing is incredible. I guess that doesn't surprise you if you know KTM. The power down the straight is all there. So they have no power issues, it seems. Their issues are obviously going to be setting up electronics, getting the bike to handle in and out of the corners, which will take some time. But at the end of the day, they finished this test only 1.9 seconds behind the top guy, which, considering where they are in development, is phenomenal. Now, certainly the Sepang circuit probably plays to the strengths of the KTM if they've got a real powerhouse in there, which it sounds like they do. So we'll see when they go to Phillip Island I think they're going to be a little bit, I don't know if they're going to get up to 1.9 seconds behind the top guy at Phillip Island. I have a feeling that they're going to be a little bit further back there because of the nature of the circuit. So either way, it looks great. I'm so happy to see KTM back. I have no doubt that they're probably going to advance pretty quickly this year. Obviously not to the top of the pack right away, but I think they're going to do well. It already looks good. So, more competitiveness for MotoGP equals more excitement and fun for the rest of us. So that wraps up my review of the Sepang test for MotoGP. The next test is in Phillip Island on February 15th, and then I do believe that they have a one-day test on March 10th in Qatar before the first race. And then, of course, March 26, 2017, round one, MotoGP. Put it in your phone, mark it on your calendar, do whatever you got to do, because I have a feeling that the 2017 MotoGP season is going to be even better than it was last year. Leave a comment, let me know what you think, hit the subscribe button, and let's look forward to more action from the MotoGP.